What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson and hosted by two guys who are covering all of your bases, like Jordan Binnington in leagues that count goalie assists and penalty minutes. Although we did not annoy Paragon of Virtue Marc-Andre Fleury so much that he dropped the word nutsack twice into his post-game interview. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Shams Benamor. Shams, buddy, how are you doing on this fine, bizarre, really weird Thursday evening of hockey?
All I could say is my day is much normal than whatever's going into the NHL. It's just too many storylines, and we're like halfway through like a couple of the games.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. It seems certainly like some of these fantasy playoff matches are going to be decided by some extremely weird games and some extremely weird goals. Sergei Bobrovsky at one point in the first period of Thursday's game had a .250 save percentage on 4 shots, yet Money Puck was giving him a 99.98% chance to win with the 7-3 lead that the Panthers had built. They did not keep scoring quite at the same pace. But that is definitely an odd one to watch as they head towards, an outside chance at topping the NHL record of 21 goals in a game. Some other weird goals that happened tonight. Lars Eller poked home his first game as a Colorado Avalanche player after Mads Søgaard covered up a puck that he seemed pretty confident was going to be called for icing. Not only was icing not blown, but the puck was not blown dead when it was under his glove, and when he lifted it up, Eller poked it home. That infuriated the Senators, and then they were penalized for attempting to review the goal and failing. Lucas Reichel took Dante Fabro and Jussi Saros into the goal to score in that game. Akira Schmid made a Save of the Year candidate, and then New Jersey gave up a goal on a break at the end of a 5-on-3. Just some wacky stuff going on, even outside of this Montreal, Florida game. But we did mention Jordan Binnington at the outset. Shams, tell us a little bit about what has been going on with Binnington and why managers will not have to worry about whether they want to consider starting him for the next little while here.
Yeah, so Binnington did everyone a favor with going off on his antics once more. And oddly enough, I don't remember recently if he ever got suspended, at least this season. But what he did actually got him a suspension for 2 games, and St. Louis only has 2 games left in this week, so you don't have him for the rest of this playoff week. And basically, I looked at his stats. I knew he wasn't doing well, but I didn't realize how bad he was doing. Out of his last 15 games, he won 4 of them with a 3.65 GAA and only a 47% quality start percentage. So it just got to the point now that, honestly, he's probably a snoozer in the first place. And then now this just kind of gives you the light to just let him go. And honestly, if someone else picks him up, that might be doing you a favor if you end up matching them up in next week.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. It might not be the worst thing in the world if an opponent grabs him because, he's really struggled. He's had some really bad starts in there. This has been not probably the end of the season that the Blues were looking for. There is a little bit of a silver lining, though, and that is their recent pickup, Jakub Vrana, who they got from the Red Wings pretty much for nothing. In 5 games since becoming a St. Louis Blue, Vrana has 4 goals now. He's averaging over 50% of the available power play time on ice. Not much over. He did have a game with 100%, but only because they scored 30 seconds into that power play. He also has 19 shots in that time. He's probably not going to keep shooting 40%. But got to be excited for the shot volume, nearly 4 shots a game, since joining the Blues. He certainly has something to prove. With Friday and Sunday games remaining this week, Vrana's only 21% rostered on Yahoo. He does look like a nice option potentially to get you into the next round of the playoffs. You certainly could pick worse options off the waiver wire, and he's pretty widely available. Kind of tough, I imagine, for you and I, Shams, as Wing fans to see him do this. It was fun to imagine what he could have done on the up-and-coming roster, but it was not to be. And he is a guy who has jumped out to good starts with new teams, but has found himself in the doghouse. We'll see how things go with Craig Berube. Berube already has quite the group to keep a handle on with Rowdy JB in his lineup. So, we'll see how things go. But a very nice start. The Blues have taken advantage of the Wings' desire to move on and given themselves a nice scoring option here, even as much of their salary is tied up in players who are pushing or over 30. So we'll see what the future holds. But Vrana, at least in the short term, and we pretty much deal exclusively in short term at this point in the season, playing very well and has about as good a schedule as you could ask for to wrap up the week.
Now, on the other end of the scale, for people like me that are a fan of goalies on bad teams, just thought we had something with the Coyotes starting both Vejmelka and Ingram on back-to-back situations. So I actually did say, I think 2 weeks ago, you could set your clock to it, that it was in such a common situation. However, now that that's not the case anymore, because the team is in let's see our players mode and has brought up Prostorov for a second start. And also, they did say that he's going to stay on the team for the rest of the season. So both him and Ingram are RFAs at the end of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if what they're doing now is just seeing what they have, because they know what Vejmelka is a good goalie, at least for them. And he's signed for a contract for at least 3 more years off the top of my head at a really good value. So they already know what they have with him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the short end of the stick, if they just give Ingram and Prostorov the long leash to just see how they play. And then the sad part is that this is just a guess, and it could be a 3-headed monster, or you're just going to be a guess of what goalie to have. And at this point, they're not really that great, only for volume at this point. And if you don't know who has the volume, it's going to be hard to hold any of them at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about some of the Arizona players who are playing well right now. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's no fun to play that guessing game. You'd like to have some steadiness. One thing that I kind of like to do is keep an eye on teams that have a back-to-back to end the week. And then if they start a backup goalie, you helped me out today because you were keeping an eye out on Akira Schmid to see if he would get a start, because it seemed pretty likely that he was also going to split and get one of the games over the weekend. So that's a good way to kind of fish for volume when you are trying to stream people in and out. Unfortunately, I outsmarted myself on Wednesday adding Semyon Varlamov, thinking that after, thinking that he would get the split and get the Anaheim game. Sorokin started back to back. So that was unfortunate. But another guy getting a second start in a row, although not in a back to back, is Daniil Tarasov. Overall, I'm pretty skeptical about this guy and about the Blue Jackets in general. They did win that rock fight against the Sharks in overtime with Johnny Hockey putting together 2 goals and 3 assists. So that obviously goes a long way towards helping your team get a victory. Tarasov won that game, but it came against the backdrop of a really bad start. He was just under that 850 cutoff at 844, I believe, for his save percentage. He also saved 2 goals fewer than an average goalie facing the same quality of shots. He has the same number of quality starts in the last 7 games as he has really bad starts, with 2 of each. And he even gave up 4 goals on 20 shots in just over a period to Chicago before getting pulled. Now, Chicago has not been the easy out that a lot of us thought that they might be, as they have been, putting on a show scoring. And we'll talk about one of their hot players as well a little bit later in the show. But despite Tarasov getting a bit of a longer look, he hasn't been super impressive. This may be another, let's see what we've got in this guy type situation. And I would not be looking for him outside of, the most dire potential circumstances. We also got some updates. As long as we're talking about goalies, you've got a couple more for us. Vegas and Carolina gave us some goalie injury updates. What's the latest that you've seen on that front, Shams?
So some really interesting news out of Vegas is that this is coming from the coach. They say that Thompson and Brossoit are progressing, and this is where it gets really interesting. Likely won't be ready to dress for at least the next 2 games. I'm not sure if I'm taking too much look into this, but if you're grouping those two together and then talking about such a near term in that frame, they did say that they're expecting Thompson to be back before the playoffs. So something to keep an eye on is that we might be seeing Thompson and or Brossoit back somewhat soon. And then on top of that, sadly, Hill is not even on track to be on the ice. So what it looks like for now on the very near term is that Quick has the net for the rest of the week, basically. I'm not sure unless they want to start the backup randomly because they don't have any back-to-backs this week or next. So Quick will have these next two games. And then depending on how, just keep an eye on the news for Brossoit and Thompson. Quick might be having a little bit more, few games starting next week. And then, honestly, we'll just keep on hanging on, and he might have it for the rest of the playoffs. But something to keep an eye on with Thompson on someone's IR. You might actually get some use out of him.
Yeah, obviously the quick renaissance here that we've been seeing has been very exciting. It's nice to see, a little bit of redemption for him after he, a lot of people felt like he was, I guess people were kind of split. Obviously I think it makes sense from a business side, but emotionally it's kind of hard to handle with the way that he ends up departing from the team with which he had so much success and helped to lead to championships. Really good for him. Very exciting to see him come out and find the level of success that he has had. It's been really cool. Also, we had an update on Antti Ranta. I can't, I have Brossoit and Aiden Hill on my IR. I have Antti Ranta on my IR too. You got to do this one also. I can't talk about these things without having a vein start to threaten to break in my head.
Well, sadly, Ranta, to no surprise to people that have used him in fantasy, is that literally the quote is, he hasn't really taken a step forward in the right direction. I'm not sure on that one. So no real sign of Ranta coming back. And the interesting thing is to keep in mind is that Carolina has a back-to-back this week, Friday and Saturday. And if I remember correctly, they have one late next week as well. So depending on how you can hold goalies or you can pick them up and drop them, Kochetkov is in a position to get two starts, at least one this week and one next week. And how they like to play Freddie, he might even sneak in another game. So this could be a situation where you could get a goalie on a good team, depending on, say, for in a categories league where you might not have to worry about getting few shots against, but you might be having a gem in the rough here with this Ranta injury.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Kochetkov, he's got likely going to get this Philadelphia game this week. That's a nice spot to get a start, certainly. Also a hopeful sign because Carolina managed to actually score some goals in their win over Winnipeg. They had been held to one total goal against Philly, Vegas, and New Jersey. Luckily, they were able to win that Philly game because Kochetkov had a 19-save shutout. So folks who picked him up are feeling pretty happy with themselves, even with a kind of lackluster performance against New Jersey. I think that's a really good option with those back-to-backs coming up. Definitely something to keep an eye on and consider moving forward here. One last injury update. We got an update on some Stars injuries. Tyler Seguin is skating on his own as he recovers from a laceration on his leg. He's going to skate with the team on Monday and then be reevaluated. So it's kind of a wait and see with Seguin. Mason Marchment, however, is looking at a 3 to 4 week recovery time. So he is likely a safe drop in 1-year leagues. If you are one of the 16% of Yahoo teams that is holding on to him and you need IR space, as long as we're talking about the Stars, I'm going to make an obligatory Jamie Benn mention another multi-point outing on Tuesday with a goal and an assist. He is up now to 85% owned on Yahoo, so that's probably just about every active league at this point. Hopefully you jumped on him when he was available, when we first started talking about him way back when. I don't know when our first episode mention was, but we've been talking about him a while. At 65 points, he has been one of the great waiver wire stories of the season. So if you grabbed him, congratulations. It's been a really nice move for you. All right, we are going to head into a quick break. We're going to talk about an important outchery for Tampa Bay. We'll talk about some hot streaks and a couple cold streaks. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. Shams, we said we are going to talk about an outree for a Tampa Bay player who had been relevant just this evening, and lo and behold, during the break, this guy managed to go and score another goal. Tell us about this guy who, I don't always subscribe to the Brian and Elon, or the Elon, I guess, is mostly the person who pushes this narrative, but the idea that sit for an injury game or two, get back on track. This guy, we talked about him being below replacement level for like a quarter of the season, but he is back with a vengeance.
Oh yeah, Steven Stamkos has been a part of all 3 goals. He assisted on the first one and scored the last 2, both power play goals. And hopefully he's not sitting in your IR, because right now they're, at least the forwards are back to normal on the power play. It's Stamkos, Kucherov, Killorn, and then Braden Point, with Sergachev, oddly enough, still being the quarterback of that. However, where things get interesting is on the 5v5 setup, where Stamkos is, I guess you could call it the second line because it's Stamkos, is centering Colton and Paul. And actually, the first goal of the game was a Colton goal assisted by Stamkos and Sergachev. So at the very least, it's looking like it's working. And that puts Hagel back on the top line with Point and Kucherov, and then Cirelli and Killorn sitting on the third line with Tanner Jeannot. So it's kind of an interesting mix. I haven't seen anything from the third line. And then that Point and Kucherov are going to be Point and Kucherov, so you're going to be fine with whoever's with them, Hagel. So it's going to be a weird mix now.
One nice thing that we saw was, or one thing I should add, rather, is that line did very nearly have another goal. Nick Paul was all alone off a rebound from Schmid, but he managed to make the save there. So it was almost another one for that line at even strength. Interesting to see Jeannot kind of buried. They paid a king's ransom for him. I guess part of that was because he is on a pretty reasonable contract for a while. So he could be, the kind of guy who, when they inevitably lose some people, he's a guy who can step in and kind of fill in that role for pretty cheap. So that's probably part of it. But Jeannot has not been given, much of an opportunity to, be part of the scoring. Obviously, he has a reputation as a grinder, and much of what he did last season with his excellent goal output was unsustainable, but just interesting to see. And then, as you mentioned, Hedman on power play 2 right now. Sergachev looking like the better option for the moment. Just to add something in that we didn't initially have on the episode, is that Jake Sanderson appears to be on power play 1 right now. I would not have guessed that he would be the one to grab power play 1 with Jacob Chychrun and Thomas Chabot in the fold. But at least for the time being, that's what it looks like. So he might be a good guy to run and jump on. Certainly seems like a lot of questions about what next year's power play might look like. So, we'll want to see what Ottawa puts together, how they want to deploy these guys, but I think it could be very interesting. I would have bet my bottom dollar that it would have been Chychrun, for this year and for next year, but, still remains to be seen. Sanderson has certainly had some success, when he's had the opportunity to be up there on power play 1. Speaking of a former teammate of Jacob Chychrun, we have to give a tip of the cap and a tap of the stick to Clayton Keller. He has been red hot really since, for months, honestly. He leads the NHL in even strength scoring since the All-Star break with 22 points, and his 30 points since the All-Star break are second only to McDavid. This was from a Sportsnet tweet. We had mentioned very early in the season that going on this 14-game road trip was going to be tough for the Coyotes, and you might be able to make some hay by offering trades for some of the Coyotes stars after that break. Now, Keller was not, maybe as he didn't play as poorly as maybe I sort of thought he might over the course of that long road trip. But he still has had a lot of success since then. And if you did make a trade for him, if you managed to get him for like a 60 point guy in early December, you are laughing right now. He had 12 points during that 14-game road trip, which is solid, but he's had 49 points in 44 games since the long road trip, just playing some outstanding hockey despite the fact that it's not the world's most talented team. Very widely owned, so this is one of those non-actionable attaboys, but definitely want to mention Keller and keep his success in mind, even without a ton of talent surrounding him for the future, because this perpetual rebuild in Arizona has got to end someday. And you imagine Keller will be right at the center of it once they start actually trying to win some games. Speaking of some rebuilding teams, another player on just a crazy hot streak in Chicago. Give us the lowdown on Taylor Raddysh right now, Shams.
Talking about things we couldn't explain at the start of the day with all the Montreal goals and everything that's going on there. Something that I can't really explain with much logic is how Raddysh has 7 points in his last 4 games, and 6 of them being goals with a hat trick, including, just the Bruins, just some random team.
Yeah, team with tons of losses, over the course of the season. Very explainable.
So, honestly, what I'm coming from, we all know this is a fleeting moment, but the way I look at it, as we already said it before, it's the fantasy playoffs. It's a short-term situation. Depending on how much risk you want to take, this is a guy that is showing you that he's doing something even on this depleted roster. So I'm of the mind, if you're in a position where you need to take a risk, because right now this week, he doesn't have any off-day games, so you're going to have to be fitting him into your roster or benching someone else. But if you need some flair, he's showing that he's producing. And the nice little bonus is that he does play Monday, which is an off night next week. So if you're in a position where you think you're going to be in a position to win, or that it's like not totally in doubt, you get that extra game on Monday, and then you can decide if you want to throw him away for a different streamer.
Yeah, always nice to have that Monday option. So yeah, keep an eye out for that opportunity. We got to talk about a cold streak here too for a couple players. These were some guys who were heroes of the pod for a while there. We had really enjoyed the success of the Eat Blake Lund line earlier in the season, talking about that Blake Coleman, Andrew Mangiapane, and Mikael Backlund line. It's really been rough times in Calgary for especially the Eat and Blake portion, as Mangiapane has gone scoreless over the last 10 games, and Coleman has nothing to show for his last 6. They only have a Saturday game remaining this week, so either could be a decent option to drop for someone getting off-day starts. I would jettison either of them for Jakub Vrana in pretty short order. But just make sure that you are aware, if your team is performing well and you are thinking about dropping one of these guys, we do get a classic California back-to-back at the Kings and Ducks on Monday and Tuesday to start next week. So they might be worth holding or potentially grabbing for that early little section there. They're also, part of the reason that Backlund has been able to dodge this malaise is that he has been seeing power play one time with Toffoli, Lindholm, Pelletier, and Anderson. 2 of his 4 points over the last 3 games have come on that power play. And besides those 4 points in this recent little streak, he didn't have anything in the 6 games prior to that. So without that help, his stat line would be much closer to Mangiapane's than I think people would like to see. So Pelletier is getting line 1 and power play time, which maybe makes him appealing for a Monday, Tuesday pickup for next week. But he has been cold too, with nothing to show for his last 7 games. So the worry there, I think, would be, you pick him up looking for something positive, but he ends up getting shifted down in the lineup. So you never know what might happen over the course of a couple games before that next one starts. Something to keep an eye on, but I don't think I would be willing to make a move to pick him up until I saw lineups for Monday's game. And with that, Shams, we have come to the end of another short shift. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks to everybody who is joining us on Twitch. Love to see you. Sorry I wasn't able to chat a ton today. Too much going on here on screen, but really glad you joined us to watch or have downloaded to listen. Please give us a follow at Short Shifts KK. Brian and Elon, of course, can be found at Keeping Carlson. I recommend you follow at Game Day Lines, at Game Day Goalies, at Game Day News NHL, and the new at Game Day Stats NHL. Amaze your friends with some of the most interesting stats from around the league. And then all of those are organized so nicely at GameDayTweets.com, including you can look by player to find updates on those individual players. There's a lot of great new utility on the site. If you haven't been there in a while, make sure you check it out. Please visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. John Reed is our digital media producer. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.